I want to talk to Tulsi Gabbard right now. And again, Tulsi, who's a member of our Secular team here, about, again, Vice President Harris putting together a coalition over the last couple of days, which for right now has made her certainly the leading candidate for the Democrat Party's nomination in August when they get together. We don't know yet if anyone else high profile will jump in that can really give her a run for the money. Certainly there's some names still out there. But I wanted to go right to you, Tulsi, because you've had experience with Vice President Harris on the debate stage before. And in fact, delivered quite a takedown that we're going to show in just a couple minutes of Vice President Harris when she was trying to push policies that she actually didn't implement when she was the Attorney General of California.
Yeah, it's interesting because that footage has been played quite a bit, especially recently. And I also heard Kamala Harris say the other day that once again, she is proud of her record as a prosecutor and pointing to how that will make her a stronger candidate against Donald Trump. What I think is necessary in this election to make sure that voters are very informed and can see past how they're going to twist Kamala Harris's record into whatever they feel will be most marketable. We have to stay focused on the facts, both the record that she had as the Attorney General of California, when she had the opportunity to bring about real criminal justice reform that helped people and kept our communities safe versus what she did, her record in Congress. As you know, probably more than most, how as a member of the Judiciary Committee, she defied the Constitution, essentially implementing a religious test when it came to a number of different judicial nominees that Trump brought forward, basically saying that they were not qualified because they were too religious or too Catholic or happened to be members of the Knights of Columbus. And then you look at the last 3.5 years as her record, with her record as vice president, whether it comes to border security, when it comes to the radical woke ideology of inflicting this trans agenda on our children, or when it comes to foreign policy. In every one of these examples, Kamala Harris has shown she is incapable and unqualified to be president, number one. And number two, her policies will continue to be a reflection of the Biden-Harris administration's policies that have made our country far worse off and less safe than they were before they took office.
Yeah, I want to play for people. This goes back to the debate that you were in with Vice President Harris at a time when she was running for president. You were running for president, and she brought up, her record, as she will again, and has already through this her new campaign now, running for president of the United States as a prosecutor. And you brought out the truths about what she did as a prosecutor in California. Folks, watch it and take a listen.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Yeah, so a couple of those things, laughing about smoking marijuana while keeping 1,000+ arrests made for that in a state like California, where obviously the laws have changed significantly since then. But she didn't really have a comeback to a lot of those answers. And in a way, Tulsi, that was kind of the end. Kamala Harris was kind of over with before she started in that process. Once people found out about that record, especially liberals found out about that record.
I think what that really exposed in that whole exchange was her hypocrisy. You can talk about the specific issues that I raised. My point was that she was proud of these positions. And yet when it came right down to it, her own rhetoric, her own example was the exact opposite. She showed throughout that campaign how she said what she felt needed to be said one day in front of one group of people to get their votes, and said the exact opposite in front of another group of people the very next day because she felt that was what they wanted to hear. It shows a lack of groundedness in in who she is and what her principles really are. It was revealing that even the New York Times, I believe, wrote a scathing editorial after she dropped out of that campaign about exactly this, how much of a chameleon that she was, not really knowing exactly even what her vision was for our country. She was driven purely by political ambition for more power, which is exactly what is driving her still today, and which is a very dangerous red flag because it shows yet again, like with President Biden and the unelected people behind the scenes who are making these decisions, who benefit from them being in power, they will say and do whatever they feel they need to retain or grow that power, even at the expense of our Constitution, our freedom, and our safety and security as a country.
Tulsi, I wanted to ask you about this because obviously Kamala Harris could try to change the way the people see her. But instead of being at the Senate and in Congress today for this joint session speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu, and even being there, she could come out and be critical. It gives her the opportunity to speak on the issue. She's decided to keep her regular schedule. She's attending a sorority event, and it's a big sorority event. I think if you were vice president, maybe even president, and it fit into your calendar, certainly you could probably go to both of these. And I feel like she could probably do that now anyways. But instead of taking that path, she's running from Washington, D.C. with a major issue that's especially controversial in her party, not especially controversial inside the Republican Party, but certainly in her party, the issue of supporting Israel and to what extent. And instead, she's punting on it and running away to Indiana.
People have been asking, and it's been questioned, well, what kind of commander-in-chief will Kamala Harris be? What kind of president will she be? She's in a position right now where our sitting president has announced he is not running for re-election, has endorsed her to take his place. And the very first opportunity that she could have to go and demonstrate her leadership and what kind of president and commander-in-chief she would be by attending and sitting in what is a major, as you said, it is a major address to Congress by our longtime strongest ally in the Middle East, the Prime Minister of Israel, coming and speaking about an issue that is important to the American people and obviously important to Israel and to Palestine and everything that's unfolding across the Middle East. This is an issue that's extending beyond this decades-long conflict, generations-long conflict between Israel and Palestine. It's one that has to do with the threat of Islamist terrorists, of which Hamas is a central part of, along with many other groups around the world. It has to do with peace and security across the region of the Middle East. And yet Kamala Harris is choosing to go and attend a political sorority event rather than being there and showing, again, what kind of president commander-in-chief she would be, which begins with showing up.
What should people be, kind of final question to you, Tulsi, what should people be looking for as they hear more, and I think pay a lot more attention to Harris now that she is the leading candidate to receive the Democrat nomination, which also comes with the money that Joe Biden and their campaign had raised. What other issues? I mean, so we talked about kind of she talks about a prosecutorial record, but doesn't like talking about who she was actually prosecuting and putting behind bars. You explained that to the American people in that first debate, which I think was effectively killed a lot of her campaign. She said horrible things about Joe Biden, but ended up being his vice president. I think people are trying to figure out right now, who is Kamala Harris? Who is she? And what kind of president would she be? Is it in the same vein of Obama, or is it even more lefty and kind of out of touch with where mainstream America is?
One thing, Jordan, that came to mind as she talks about being tough on crime, and no doubt they are going to try to push that in the hopes of winning over people who are rightly concerned about how under the Biden-Harris administration, so many of our communities and cities have become less safe, and the Democrat elite policies have tended to favor the well-being of violent criminals more than the interests and well-being of the victims of these crimes. When you go back, and this is what I hope people focus on here in the next few months of this election, look at her record. She was going after parents who were trying to homeschool their kids for the crime of truancy instead of supporting school choice. there are many issues we don't have time to get into here. My main thing is don't be distracted by the optics and the fact that they've changed the face of the figurehead of the Democrat elite. Their policies have been disastrous for our country and will continue to be so under a President Kamala Harris. We cannot afford that as a country, and she must be stopped.
As always, Tulsi, we appreciate you being part of our team and shedding light on that unique opportunity that you've been on the stage with her and calling her out for her record. I think you're right there too. It's like don't get confused by just the look change or the name change. Is that these are the same radical policies by the same people behind them.